And the fact that you are here, I know you share it, whether you're from Newcomb or Maxwell or Espanola or Rio Rancho, that you share the important view that this is an issue that we do very much have to address squarely. And as I was thinking about my remarks this morning, and being familiar with the issue of bullying, it certainly is something that we have to sort of step out of in some ways to recognize that this isn't the type of thing that we may have grown up with ourselves. Visions of Butch from the Little Rascals and the bully that he was to Spanky and Alfalfa. That's not what we're talking about. We all know that. We're talking about something that is much, much serious, much, much more serious. And it's the viewpoint that unfortunately many people have, that is the bullying that exists today, that we have to help educate people to understand that what we are dealing with is something much more serious with very, very serious ramifications. So it's from the perspective of the U.S. Attorney, and it's a perspective of a parent. That I'm very pleased to speak to you this morning. I do have a lot to say to you this morning. I don't think I have time, really, if I was given 12 hours to say as much as I would like to say to you about bullying and really how it affects my job as both the U.S. Attorney and as a parent. But let me get started, because it's those points of view, I think, in your perspectives where we all have a very intersecting point of view. And commonality. I'd also like to thank Representative Rick Mietta for being here and for the leadership that he is bringing to state government and the state legislature particularly to deal with this issue head on. So thank you very much, sir. I am very happy to see some familiar faces this morning. Two parents that I know very well from Madison Middle School and even Sandia High School. My son, who's 15 years old, has been to school with their daughter and has been in the band with their daughter. And so I'm very glad to see them here. So Alex, my son, is 15, high schooler. My daughter is 8, she's a second grader. And like any parent, I want them to grow up with every opportunity that I can possibly muster for them, as you would as well. And I know, as you do, that education is the key to their success, as it was for me. And though the key to their success and a good education also depends very much on having a safe environment in which to learn, an environment free of harassment by other students. All our children deserve a learning environment that allows them to reach their full potential. And no child should be scared to go to school because of bullying or any type of harassment. And so for that reason, what all of you do, whether it's from Maxwell or Wagamouth or Penasco, is so important and really matters. And it matters to me professionally. So, it isn't often that the United States Attorney gets to speak to you, a room full of educators and even parents. But for many people in the Department of Justice does what it does, and what you do are often viewed as being very different and even at opposite ends of the spectrum. And that's a false perception. But it goes something like this, that the theory is that students have to make choices, and we can agree on that, and that they have to make good choices and succeed in school and in life, and we can also agree on that. And certainly that they can make bad choices, and sometimes those bad choices land them up in the criminal justice system. And following that viewpoint, it would follow that you as teachers take care of the good kids so that they can go to college. And we in the criminal justice system have to deal with the bad kids and get them off the street? Well, one of the reasons I'm here today is because we all know that that is really not how the world works. People who work in law enforcement and people like you who work in our schools know that our jobs are inextricably intertwined. When the homes of our children and neighborhoods don't feel safe, children have a tough time focusing on school, and that's plain. When children are not engaged in school, if they are bullying others or being bullied, we know that they can lead into a path that comes straight to the criminal justice system for bullies and victims alike. What does it take to reduce crime and communities safe? And if asked, most people think of traditional law enforcement issues. Do we have enough police officers on the street? Are those officers using the right techniques? Are we being smart about how we prosecute crime? Those are good questions to ask. But all of us in this room know that reducing crime and keeping communities safe requires so much more. We know that it takes a lot more than police, prosecutors like myself, and prisons to make a community safe. We need people who watch out for each other and who have a stake in their community. And we need an economic base that keeps people engaged and relatively free from need. And of course, we need safe schools. In the Department of Justice, we are very fortunate to be led by an Attorney General, my boss, who has a very broad view about how to make communities safe. Because the research is very clear. And it shows that for every child who ends up in the criminal justice system, there are countless missed opportunities for early intervention. And as a result, Attorney General Holder and the Department of Justice make every effort to take an in-depth look at the problem of children exposed to violence and uncover some of the troubling facts. Some of those facts include, based on research, that exposure to violence, whether the child was an observer or a direct victim, is associated with long-term physical, psychological, and emotional harm. It shows that children exposed to violence are more likely to go on to abuse drugs and alcohol, and that they are at greater risk of depression, anxiety, and other post-traumatic disorders, and that they fail in school more than any other kids, and that they're most likely to develop chronic diseases and to have trouble forming emotional attachments, and that they're more likely to commit acts of violence themselves. Now, through its national survey on children exposed to violence, the very first comprehensive look at children as victims and witnesses of crime, abuse, and violence from infancy to age 17, the Department of Justice found that most children are exposed to violence in their daily lives. And the majority of children, more than 60%, have been exposed to crime, abuse, and violence. And that helps explain why I am here and why the work that you do is so vitally important. We know that bullying has lasting, very serious effects for both victims and perpetrators, and that bullying can be a sign of other serious antisocial and violent behavior. And kids who bully are more likely to get into fights, vandalize and steal, be truant and drop out of school, and carry a weapon. And these impacts are long-lasting, and the research tells us that there is a strong association between victimizing peers at school or in the street, on the playground or in the gym, whatever the case might be, during school years, and leads to engaging in illegal behavior as adults. And if you realize that bullying is not just a school's problem, how do we respond to it? That's the question. When you and I were kids, students were bullied for being overweight, being too tall, being too short, wearing glasses, wearing braces, name it. Or just simply being some kind of nerd or being different. It wasn't so commonplace that children were being bullied for being gay, or because of sexual promiscuity. Back then, we were taught that if you have courage to fight back, the bullies would back down. But bullying is not that simple, and the notion that kids will be kids isn't the answer to the problem. So, when we talk about bullying, we are talking about a destabilizing force that not only disrupts a school environment, it disrupts young lives in very serious and far-reaching ways with dangerous academic, health, and safety consequences. Now, we know that bullying starts early. That bullying is widespread, it escalates when unchecked, it takes many forms, and it is always evolving. And from reported tragic teen suicides, we know that bullying can be fatal. So, with increasing use of social networking sites and text messaging, the face of bullying is changing. Previously, an incident may have involved girls bickering with each other over boys on the playground. Today, insults and retaliation for insults are not only made face-to-face, they are also posted on a classmate's Facebook account for everyone to see. As the internet becomes today's playground, the distinction between what took place inside and outside of school is disappearing. And you, as educators, are now spending time mediating conflicts between students that began online or through text messaging. And what's more, the anonymity offered by technology can lead to even more vicious and malicious insults. It is apparent that children, and sometimes adults, are willing to push the envelope in cyberspace and say malicious things that they might not otherwise say in person. Never before has particularly cruel harassment from school persisted as long as it does now online, where, for example, a Facebook group populated with hundreds of members can be dedicated solely to making fun of a classroom because of his or her hair color or the color of his or her skin. A few statistics. The Journal of Adolescent Health reported that the number of adolescent victims of online harassment increased by 50% between 2000 and 2005. And as students become more technologically sophisticated at younger ages, and I know that, I have a 15-year-old, and even my 8-year-old can really run circles around me when it comes to the use of the computer. They learn early on the internet that the internet can be very powerful and even a hurtful tool. Bullying is changing in other ways as well, as harassment also has become much more sexually explicit. Many middle school, high school, and college students are posting comments on websites that are full of sexual innuendo, attacking fellow students. And this type of harassment haunts and torments kids who are keenly aware that not just a few classmates can view these posts, but the whole world can view them as well.